In this video, we're going through all rendering methods that is supported on Next.js with building a practical components for each rendering methods in pages directory. We are going to learn SSR, SSG, CSR, ISR, and partial pre-rendering, which is PPR. Hey guys, this is Reza Attar. I'm a simple Next.js developer, and let's begin our tutorial. So, to give a demonstration about the project, I have created a homepage which supports partial pre-rendering. I'm going to talk about this last. I have created a weather component which supports server-side rendering, blog posts which supports SSG static site generation. I have created products page which supports ISR, Incremental Static Regeneration, and search, which is client-side rendering. If you don't know any of these concepts, this is a mid-level tutorial, so it's okay. Stick to the end of this video. I promise you will learn it by the end of this video. So, the first things first, weather component. What it does is actually fetches the data on the API. Let's navigate to the component code. This is a server-side rendering, and you see here we are using async function, which is async component function, functional component, which is only supported in servers by Next.js. And it's pretty the default functions that you declare in Next.js considered as server components. So this is a server component. We are fetching the data of the weather API URL directly, and this is just a type. This is the URL of the API, and we are setting the data, getting the server-side props from before loading the component. Okay, we fetch the data and pass it as a props to the data. Okay, and then we render the data standalone. And as you can see here, if we come to the network tab, we hit refresh, we don't see any of requests that we've been making throughout fetch. So this is more secure way to do it. If you want to fetch data that is, we don't want to expose any data, sensitive data to the client, which is my browser. We use the server components to fetch the data. And the data is fetched, and the HTML has been rendered on the server and sent back to the client, to our browser. And you see here it only sends the HTML document to my browser, and no other data fetching is available in here. And you can see the URL that I'm fetching. And yeah, this is SSR. The next thing that we're gonna go over is blog post. The blog post is written in using a static site generation method, rendering method. And if you want to simulate fetching from CMS, and we can use the MDX or Markdown, we can support anything we want, but I just wanted to just declare an object and send the title and a content to this. These contents are generated at build time. When we try to build our project, when we come here in the terminal and we say like npm run build, this content stays the same when we build our project. Right now, because we are in development mode, we are in dev mode, this content gets updated when we save and hit refresh on the browser, you see. But when we create a build of this next project, it won't get changed anyway. This is good for static content like blog posts that's not going to change at all. And if it only changes during our build time. Yeah. The next one is products. Let's move into products page. We are using the get static props, same as before, right? We are getting static props from the static SSG. But with the difference that we are returning props and we are revalidating. We tell Next.js we want this data to be revalidated and updates every 60 seconds. This is a number that we can change. We want the content to be updated every 10 seconds, or we want the data to update every 3600, which is an hour, I guess. I don't know. I shouldn't lost my train of thoughts. And yep, and this content, for example, this is the dummy product JSON, dummy JSON products. It doesn't get updated so often, so it's a dummy API, of course, obviously. But this is a practical example of ISR when we want to fetch the data that it's not. We don't want the data to be updated in real time, but we don't want to leave that data behind and not update it at all, because we are updating products every now and then. So we are using ISR for this, and pretty much the same as SSG, but the only differences is this revalidating every time, every 60 seconds that we define in here. Okay, and all of the other things in this are the same. Note that if you open network tab in here, we also don't see any request has been made through our browser component, and only it returns our HTML, generated HTML on the server. Okay, moving back, CSR, client-side rendering, which is dynamic, which is the rendering method that we have been used if we didn't use any frameworks recently, or just a simple thing. We have an input, we have an input search, we have a result, and a product card from before that is rendering the data that we are fetching throughout this, and we are searching when we change the value of this input. We're going to handle change, and if the value length is more than 2, we are going to start fetching and searching for the products with the query word that we have set in here, and we are setting the results to this component. For example, if I wanted to fetch some phone, anything related to phone is loaded in here, and if I found nothing, I found 23 results for this. And if you go to the network tab for client-side rendering, note that we have to use client in the first line of our code. In pages directory, it assumed it's a use client, it's a client component, and if we try to mark this function as async, it will throw an error because we have to use this keyword only if you're in server components. And when I clear this network request, when I try to fetch some data, all the requests for data has been made throughout my browser. You see here, and we can see the results of this API call in here. This is a client-side rendering. Use this rendering method when we has to have a user interaction like this search bar and input, and we want to make a request on user events. And for the last one, we have PPR simulated. Because it's not fully supported in pages directory, we I have created an here. This is a server component that is loading this section and all of the other sections, like linking this and a footer and a header. But this section is dynamic and using client-side rendering. I have imported hero banner, which is this dynamic hero container. I have turned off SSR for this and loading method for this. And in here, in the component itself, when the page loads, I try to fetch some random codes. I hope this is not offensive, because the codes are random and pre-made by developers and as such. And I've been using state to set the code, and if the code is not ready yet from the fetch function, I try to loading a code using a loading component, or just render a something loading. Yeah, we can use another file, loading.js, for this, but I just wanted to keep things simple. And when I hit refresh, loading quote, and you see the loading quote here. All of the other data is server side, but this one's here is client side. This can be simulated as partial pre-rendering, but in pages directory. And when we check the network tab for this, we see that we are fetching the API call directly in the browser, and it's okay. Yeah, and we are not fetching on the server. The actual partial pre-rendering PPR supports server fetching. So that's it. That's all of the rendering methods for now. In the next video, I'm going to do all of this in the app directory in Next.js 15.3. And leave a comment if you have any questions. Let me know which rendering methods do you use more often. And as I've promised, now you know all of these rendering methods by now. This has been Reza Attar. Don't forget to subscribe to help me encourage more to do these kinds of videos. And yeah, nothing else. Bye bye.